much a side note. Um, but what I wanted to talk about is the disadvantage of selfishness, and it's part of that way that seems right on to a man, and the end thereof leads to death. And the reason that we look for this way that is right to us is because of our own selfishness, because our own desires, the lust of the eyes, the lust of the flesh, and the pride of life. That's why there's ways that look right to us, because they agree with the lust of the eyes, the lust of the flesh, and the pride of life. They look good, feel good, and basically there's something to gain. And that's why you got to die to yourself, because you keep on giving in to selfishness, you're going to be led on the wrong road. Quite frank and simple. Jesus said, broad and wide is the road that leads to destruction, straight and narrow is the road that leads to life. He wants you on the straight and narrow road. He doesn't want you on the wide and broad road because you're going to die there. That's the road everybody else is going. So you don't follow the popular trends. Give you a little tidbit, something I learned over the years. Put it to the test, and this is true. The bulk of the people are wrong most of the time. It's true. It is totally true. You got it within the secular realm and within the church realm. Don't follow where the bulk of the people are going. Because broad and wide is the road that leads to destruction. You see the road where everybody else is going on, that's the wrong road. You're looking for a path that is there's few people on it. So you got to come out of that, right? And you're not going to find that path if you're going to be blinded by your own selfish desires. What I want, what I feel. And that's the bondage that the world has found itself into is because of their selfishness. Talking to people all over the street, all over the Philly, and when it comes to an avenue of truth, simple truth, people get angry. It's not even spiritual truth, just simple, basic in your front. What's their truth? And they get mad because they want what they want. They don't want the truth because the truth stabs you right in the heart. You want to be free from selfishness, the truth will do it. Truth will break that self-centeredness right out of you. That's the way the truth's always been. But that's why we got, because that's why we have so much evil in our world. It's due to selfishness. It really is. I mean, you see all the politicians there, they're lying through their teeth, trying to get the way. You know what's first for us? Lust of money, lust of power, and basically trying to make themselves bigger than they actually are. So the course of lying is based on selfishness. Men lie for three reasons: money, wealth, and power. Those three reasons men lie. For one reason, whatever. Those are the three main reasons, you know. That's why it's so important you go to Christ for the truth, right? Because Christ is all might and all power. All power in heaven and earth belongs to him. He's not going to lie to gain power because he already has total authority and power. Unlimited. So he really doesn't need any type of thing from you as far as power and riches and wealth. Well, he doesn't lie to get wealth either because he owns all the universe and everything in it. And he can give it to whoever he pleases. He doesn't have to lie to you to gain wealth because he owns it all. Right? And he's totally selfless. Selfless. So basically, the only place you can go for total truth is to God because all men are liars. And if any man says he's not a liar, well, I'm going to just give you the scriptures. This is what it says. If any man says he has not sinned, he's a liar and the truth is not within him. The love of the Father is not in him. You have no sin, you're a liar. Did I just accuse you? Nope. I don't know anybody I'm talking to anybody. I just throw that out there. I'm telling you what it says. If it convicts you, then you need to go to God. And enough of these apologies to speak the truth. You're not judging. And that scripture that deals with judging, that deals with hypocrisy. Jesus was talking to a whole bunch of selfish people, Pharisees. And the religious leaders of this day are like the Pharisees, self-centered and obstinate. They want lust, power, and greed. They don't want the truth. They don't want the truth. And that's the thing is with selfishness, it makes you stubborn. makes you obstinate against the truth. That's where you had with Stephen when he was stoned. He still spoke to a lot of the Jews at that time who were stoning him, and he was telling them the truth. The Holy Spirit was convicting them concerning the truth instead of giving into it because of the selfishness which led to pride. This is the way they were receiving the truth. No, we can't hear it no more. Some of them was actually trying to rip their ears off. Oh, no, kill them. That's the way it was when you go into selfishness. When you're looking everything through selfishness. Not only do you reject truth, you try to kill the ones who bring it. That's a way of total selfishness. And we see it in an example that Peter died. I mean, not Peter, the apostle, evangelist. He died. But he died as a martyr. Jesus stood up to receive him into his sight because he spoke the truth and was willing to die for it. You know, the only way to deal with selfishness or the disadvantage of it is to give it away, because there is a severe disadvantage with selfishness. Because God resists the proud and he gives grace to the humble. Right? The pride are totally selfish. Their own desires, their own will, their own purposes, they come first. God resists you. Too often I see that in churches. Like there's one musician I met in church, and I knew he was very talented. He was hanging out in the church. I'm like, why don't you leave worship? He said, well, I have to come first. I ain't got no money off my music. Then why am I going to give it to anybody else, including God? No, I hope he repented from that. Because if he wanted to put his talents for himself first, then he goes up between Christ, he's going to be the last. Not to mention, he has a gift given from God. Well, to whom much is given, much is being required. The use of his gift, God's going to hold him accountable for. His selfishness already penalized him. That's the way it is. When you're selfish, you don't want to give to God. Don't matter giving to God first, you just don't give to God at all. Because of your selfishness, and it kills. We're going to the garden, right? We're going to the story of Adam and Eve, right? And what did the devil cater to? Eve's selfishness, right? Eve, how about that apple? You want to eat that apple, Eve? God told us not to eat the apple. If we wouldn't touch the tree, we're going to die. Nah, that's not true. You're not going to die. God knows as soon as you open it, you're going to be like him, knowing good and evil. He thought it was good for the eyes, it would taste good, and would make her wise. Basically, she was seeking her own self-interest. The devil convinced her to pursue her own self-interest, and this is the result. A fallen, backslidden race. There's only one way out of it. Accept Christ and surrender. Give everything over to him. Live a life of total unselfishness. That's the way Christ lived. I mean, he didn't have to come and set an example for us. We're talking about the one who is the Lord of Lords, the King of Kings, the great I am, the Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end. All the wealth of heaven was at his command. So what he did, he became one of us. Was born in a manger. He could have been born as a king. He could have been born into royalty. No, he was born the son of a carpenter. He was born in a manger. Didn't even have a proper place to rest. And Jesus said, hey, birds of the air have their nests, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head. He didn't have a home when he was here. He forsook a home. He didn't have a house. His heart wasn't with that. He just lodged with people. Whoever put him up. Jesus was not for himself. And that's the way Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob lived. They didn't live for themselves. Why? Because they left all civilization. They left a prosperous culture. Abraham was in the land of Ur. He had wealth because he took a lot with him on his journey over to the promised land. And he had a chance to go back and regain it all. But no, he took it as lost. Why? Because his citizenship was not on the earth. He didn't seek anything. It was in heaven. He gave up everything on earth for the riches of heaven. You want to gain heaven and everything heaven has to offer, you have to surrender the earth and everything that is has to offer. Selfishness will go the wrong way. There is a severe disadvantage to it. We see the rich young ruler, and it's a very sad story. The rich young ruler thought he had everything, right? He said, Lord, what must I do to be saved? You know the commandments, so forth, so on. Yeah, I kept them from my youth. Jesus didn't argue with him. Okay, fine. There's one thing you still lack. Sell everything you have and give it to the poor, then you have riches in heaven. Come and follow me. The rich young ruler walked away, deeply disturbed because he had great riches. And Jesus said, yes, it'll be easier for the to go through the eye of a needle than to have a rich man to enter into the kingdom of heaven. You know that eye of a needle. That term has been mistaught for years. It's a military term. There was a little opening in the wall that a soldier to go through, he had to leave so narrow that he had to leave everything else behind. He couldn't come through with any weapons because it was so narrow. That's the eye of the needle. To enter into the kingdom of heaven, you have to let everything else go. To enter in, you can't hold on to anything. It's like the monkey. They trapped him in Africa. They have this trap where the monkey goes in, and there's a banana in there, and there's real narrow opening to the box where the banana's at. All the monkey has to do is go in, grab the banana, and then he can't pull his hand out while he's holding on to the banana. Right? So while he's trying to get the banana out and he refuses to let it go, the monkey hunter just come and chop off his head. Why? Because he would not let go of the banana. And that's the way it is in selfishness. You gotta let stuff go, or you can end up losing your life. That's the way with things with materialism. You gotta let it go. Don't hold on to it. It's not worth it. It really isn't. I mean, I'm a musician. You see me, I just led worship and I write music, but it's not about the money for me. It's about doing good. About taking from my life and handing it to somebody else. Um, and I get a lot of flack from musicians who basically do everything for profit. It's not all about money. Why? Because that's actually a selfish desire. It's not about the money. It's about the good of the people. And when I find my music has touched people's hearts, that's what makes a difference. Because you made a difference in somebody's life. That's priceless. That's worth more than any money can actually buy. And the disadvantage of selfishness, you never know the joy that could actually come from the music you create. You'll never know it. Because you're always looking at the music as far as what I put in my pocket rather than what you put in somebody else's heart. You lose joy. And most of these musicians I know that do make for money, they don't have any joy. They're restless. They're angry. They're anxious. Right? They go through the music and it's mechanical because they worked on every innuendo. It's not real. It's not flowing. And they don't have the joy that comes from the creative process. It's when you're giving out and somebody receives something from it that they can improve their life. That's joy. You don't gain that if you're creating just to get stuff. You may get the money, but you're not going to get the joy that actually comes from the gift. Because the gift is given out for you to bless others. And as you bless others, joy fills your heart. But you lose out on all that because basically you then made your music for a buck. And the worst thing I think happened to the music or the musicians in the last 100 years, the advent of recording, because now you can actually sell music. Before that, all you had to do is go out and play, and if people were blessed, they give you a few bucks, you move on. It was more about reaching out to the people because there wasn't a whole lot of money involved. Now there's a whole lot of money involved. Nobody cares less about doing good. That's why you see the music in the world is doing a lot of damage because we've got attitudes and concepts that are destructive. It's one of the reasons our relationships are falling apart because we stopped going from basic truth seeking concerning our relationships on our spouses and approaching the other in a state of humility, being proud and arrogant, and approaching each other in a state of pride and conflict. That pride and conflict came through the music. I mean, women are much more than a piece of meat. Their soul and the spirit and the body. Their spirit and the soul and the body. There's three avenues to them. You listen to the music, you only think of one, they're a piece of meat. And women aren't like that. And it gets me disgusted, some of the views, soup points. I refuse to play some of that stuff. Why? Because I respect women. I respect them. I want to treat them as a precious soul, a spirit. I want to treat them accordingly because they're very valuable. They're more than just pieces of meat to be devoured. And it gets me disgusted, some of the viewpoints that you entertain. And you know why it's going out there? Because it makes money. You're making money destroying lives, and that's not a good thing. That is not a good thing. Like you see the politicians in the world, especially in the U.S., they make money creating racial conflict. That's not a good thing. It's selfishness. And that does a lot of damage. You see this going on because I seen them when the George Floyd conflict became. I'm not going to go into whether that was right or wrong, but some of the lawyers you've seen do it, civil rights lawyers, they make money off of civil conflict, off of racial conflict. So when you see one of them on there interviewing, they have a monetary gain in keeping the conflict going. You can fight and kill each other, it's okay, as long as they make their money. That's the way it is in the legal profession. Very few are out for truth and justice. And these people are on national stages creating more conflict in order to make money. And it really got me because you go into it, the awesome message that brings people together is the message of the cross. Christ died for all men, regardless of race, creed, and color. And he made a statement through the cross. God said, listen, all men everywhere are worth dying for. It's a statement of the cross. Every man is worth dying for. Every man was worth giving Christ's life for. And Christ thought you were valuable enough to lay down your life for the black, for the white, for the Jew, for the German, for the Irish, for the Jew, for Muslim. He even laid down his life for all. There is no division. That's one song I wrote called One. Deals with just that. There's only one. He died for the human race. He did not die for specific ethnic groups. Because the promise was given to Adam first. When they first found the garden, and I'm going to bring a seed out of the woman. So, a child's going to be born to a woman, and he's going to crush the devil's skull. He's just going to bruise his ear, have a temporary wound, and he's going to free mankind. That promise came in the garden. The Jews were custodians of that promise. It was to all the world. They were keepers of it. But it was actually for the entire world, not just for Israel. And that's why Christ died, and all men came through him. Because that's what the promise was for. It's for all men. It doesn't matter. And in Christ, it doesn't matter. Because what God does, he takes from different ethnic groups, different tongues, different tribes. He builds you into one nation. I'm a child of God, a citizen of heaven. My Indian brother, born in India, raised in the Indian culture, he's part of my nation. I'm going to honor him. He's my countryman. And that's something you lack. That's where patriotism comes in. You join together because you're the part of a nation. A kingdom divided against itself will not fall. That's the truth. And what a kingdom divided itself is when every people in the kingdom are selfish. They won't give in. That's when a nation or a kingdom becomes divided, when nobody wants to give in to their own way for the common good. That's a divided kingdom. That's a kingdom that will fall. Look at the U.S. That's what we are. We are a divided kingdom. It's because of selfishness. Because selfishness brings division. Giving yourself away and surrendering brings peace and harmony. That's the way it always is. Always was. Hold on to your own ambitions, your own desires. You're not going to have peace with anybody else. And we see this because one friend of mine has got so wrapped up in his own point of view, he can't see any argument. And when he's off, he's really off. Nobody can stop him. And you try to, you get into a nasty fight with him, especially he's alone all the time. His selfishness caused total isolation because nobody actually wants to deal with him. That's one of the biggest disadvantages to selfishness. It will destroy your relationships. I mean, you're in a marriage basically is about give and take. And that's the way marriage is. You have to give yourself over to the other person for it to work. Unless you do that, it doesn't work. It don't work unless you give yourself over to the other person. And that's the danger of selfishness. It will destroy your marriage. It'll destroy your marriage. It destroys your community, and takes money away from the rich people, the good people, the worthy people. So I just say right now, just encourage everybody right now. If you haven't done so, just give away yourself. And that's the way Christ came. Christ came to show us a new and living way. It's not a way of self-centeredness. That's the way the Pharisees or the religious system is. That's the way the religious system is today. It's very self-centered. The holding back truth basically put money in the coffers, not because they guard your soul. That's why they're not dealing with sin, because they couldn't care less where you end up in eternity as long as they get their money. It's the religious system. That's not the church. The church is a bunch of believers that believe in Christ. Christ lives in them, and they live in their God. They're filled with love and mercy. That's the church. It's a body of believers, not an organization. And we have to clearly think in these days and hours, what is the church? Because it's been redefined to an organization that reflects corporate America. It's totally different. The image of a shepherd should be Jesus Christ, not Elon Musk. But most Christians who end up in churches think of Elon Musk as the image of a pastor rather than Jesus Christ. You know why the church is messed up? Why? Because that's a self-centered attitude. Elon Musk leads a multinational corporation, does whatever he feels. Every decision he makes is to benefit himself. It's not to benefit us. So with the vaccines, it's not to benefit us, it's to benefit themselves. It's all about the cash. That's what it is. That's all about the cash. But the thing is, you got to get to it. Is you have to get into the realm, but you can't. You'll always be at a disadvantage to selfishness until you choose to give yourself away. Surrender it and start to live a selfish lifestyle, selfless lifestyle. That's a lifestyle Christ did. Everything he did was for somebody else. And that's the example that he set. That's the example set by Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They lived their lives in a world that is yet to come. They were totally void of all the materialism of this day. They put it aside to seek out the kingdom. You want to do right? You want to do good? Give it away. Just give it away. I mean, I preach a little differently than Pastor Steve. Pastor Steve is, he goes into those verses and he plans them out and he comes up with his points. He's a very good preacher. He's a good teacher. He's operating in the gift what God gave him. Mine's a little different. I just speak straight from my heart. I just urge you. But we want to do good to our communities. Surrender yourselves. Lord, take me. And that's when the church comes in unison. You know why it's so divided? I'll tell you why it's so divided. Everybody's holding on to their own way. It's selfishness that's divided the church. Nobody wants to give in. Nobody wants to consider that maybe they got something wrong. It's pride and selfishness. It's funny because the Assemblies of God were formed years ago. There was a bunch of people from different denominations who were so divided. They drove them crazy, so they went into a remote place, fasted and prayed and sought God. asking God to take all these divisions, show them what was true. God came in like a rushing wind, showed them who he was, and everybody in that retreat repented, turned to God, was saved. They became in total unison because God had his way. That formed the Assemblies of God. The Assemblies of God have gone off its roots, off its foundations. They forgot where they came from. They actually became a denomination. They became that very thing that the original Assemblies of God, the original members of the Assembly of God were set free from. They actually became it. They fell into the ways of this world, lust, power, and greed. They stopped being a vital avenue of life, became a religious organization. And I emphasize that a lot, the difference between the church and a religious organization, because the church is an organism. That's what Christ died for at Calvary, was gave birth to the church is a living organism, not an organization. You want to live right? Think of the church as an organism, not as an organization. And an organism has to be provided for. An organism has to be cared for. It's a different avenue. It's a different line of thinking. But you don't think in those terms. You think in total selfishness. And that's why people are so out to fall under the guise of organizations because of selfishness. And it's a lot easier to go to a certain organization that handles a certain thing than you going, dealing with yourself, researching it. Go to people that are in the know, that are involved in this field, so you can have their knowledge in order to work it out yourself. That takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of giving yourself. If you're lazy and selfish, you rather just go to the institutions. It's laziness. That's the whole thing. Because you just don't want to do it yourself. Again, it goes back to selfishness. But the root cause of all the chaos we're having is selfishness, pride. And it begins when we turn away from it. Realize that no man anywhere on this planet has a monopoly on the truth. We see in part, we understand in part. You know how crazy it is? The one person that sees a corner of the painting tries to critique the whole piece. That's why men are wrong when they make big moves, because they only can see part of the entire picture. Evil men, self centered, only see parts and they're destroyed by what they haven't taken into account. Because they'll refuse to see it. They only want to see one small aspect. That was the fall of Adolf Hitler. He was so evil, so self-centered, he only saw that certain point of view. The other things that were going on caught him totally by surprise. He couldn't adjust until it was finally gone. And that's the way it is with evil regimes. They're so self-centered, so narrow-visioned, they will ignore the very avenue that will lead to their destruction because of their self-centered views. Eventually, selfishness will do you in. That's why there's a way that looks right onto a man, and the end there will lead to death. Because we're selfish beings. The only way to get out of it is to surrender yourself, give way, let yourself go, humiliate yourself, come to the point where you realize you don't know what you're talking about. You're not an avenue of truth. What Jesus did. Jesus was the only one that had told the truth. And Jesus said, hey, unless your righteousness exceeds those of the Pharisees, you will not enter into the kingdom of heaven. The Pharisees were totally self-centered. And it was about them. They had their clothes. They had to look real nice. They had to speak with a certain thought. They went and preached on the hilltops in the gardens to be seen so people would see how holy they are. That's just like our preachers today. It's just like them. The more things change, the more they say the same. I'd rather listen to that guy that's going out in jeans and a t-shirt and talking to people like they're normal. At least he's doing it like Jesus. That's the way Jesus did it. I have nothing against screaming the word of the Lord from the corners, Jeremiah did that, and he was authentic. There's nothing wrong with that, but it has to be real. And not to mention, when Jeremiah did it, he had to run for his life. It wasn't to his own advantage. He even tried to stop because it was getting so dangerous and he couldn't do it. Um, well, that's all I got to say right now. So, guard your heart. Don't listen to all the music around. You have to go and learn to live selflessly. And to do it, you have to separate yourself from the world and the things of the world. Because the things of the world all center around selfishness. The entertainment is a big thing. It's all selfish. Right? Sporting. I don't really get into that because that's selfish too. They're going in there just to entertain themselves. That's actually self-serving. So I don't deal with it. I'd rather create the music than listen to the music. I'd rather create the story than read the story. I'm a creative personality. Well, I gotta get going now because I've been on here for a while. Father, I thank you for everybody that's heard this message. Father, I thank you. Father, I pray that you just touch their hearts and their minds and their souls, Father. Help them to walk in your ways, oh God. Father, lead them to the way that would be in agreement with the example sent by your servant Jesus Christ. This I pray in Jesus' name. All you have to do is invite Christ in. Christ died for you going the wrong way. All you have to do is say, Lord, I'm done. I don't want to go my way. I want to follow you. You ask him and tell him, you shed your blood for me. You sacrificed for me so I can die to my own selfish desires so I can live according to yours. And if you did it right, the Lord will save you right then and there. Because that's what the cross was for. That's the reason he died. He died because we were selfish. He gave himself up. It wasn't for us that it wasn't for himself that he died, it was for us. For the joy that was set before him, he endured the cross and scorning his shame. Us were the joy that was set before him. All those are going to be redeemed through his sacrifice. That was the joy that was set before him. Selflessness. And funny, because I had a worship leader give a rendering that was total selfish. He went through the cross. Why? He saw the throne room. To get back, no, that wasn't it. That was self-centered. It was the love. The people that would be redeemed. Because it's totally unselfish. Well, I gotta get going. God bless you. Mike AK Prophet Song. If you like this, you can subscribe to me. If you're on the Holy site, you subscribe there because we have a service every 11 a.m. every Sunday. I do worship. Pastor Steve's the one who usually does the preaching. You can follow me on my website. Wherever you're listening to me now, you can subscribe to me there. Or you can subscribe to me at HAPS, and you can support me through HAPS. And PayPal and Holy Ministries. And the links are all on the sites. So if you like this broadcast, it blesses you. Support us. Because where your heart is, where your money is, there your heart is also. So God bless you. Prophet Song out.